And it confirms what, is standard public health maximum. I mean, it's not the spectacular and rare that kills you, although it gets the news. It's the mundane, day in, day out, something that's been going on 300,000 years that is killing people. And, but that isn't necessarily where the money and the intention goes. Now, let me just say, this doesn't necessarily mean I'm pro-nuclear. I think the problems with nuclear power are different from radiation, but relate to proliferation, somebody stealing weapons material and making bombs, and that makes nuclear power, I think, a unreliable, expensive, and dangerous, unless efforts are made to internationalize the nuclear fuel cycle so that the plutonium and enriched uranium have no chance of being stolen, and it's very difficult to imagine how to do that. But it's more of a political than a technical issue. What about India? Well, generally, and maybe what people don't understand is that environmental risk factors are bigger in developing countries, both bigger in absolute and in relative terms, per capita. Unsafe, indoor smoke was about 400,000 a year, if you like, and tobacco was about 700,000. Now you might ask, well, what's something wrong with the math here? I mean, the tobacco's further down, yet it's 700,000. Well, again, babies don't smoke. And there are babies dying here with a lot of lost life years, not there. So, first acceptance of global burden disease, 2004. Now, the burden of disease is being redone, and I'm sorry I can't show you the results. They're going to be coming out in a couple of months. But we are adding, these are the diseases now that are included from household air pollution that are included. Pneumonia and low birth weight in children, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, lung cancer, heart disease, and cataracts in adults. There is pretty good evidence, actually, in tuberculosis, cervical cancer, and retarded physical and mental growth in children, but not considered sufficient to go above the line, so to speak, in the new burden. The next time the burden is done, I guarantee you, these will be included. In fact, I can predict the set of diseases that will be included over time, exactly the same set of diseases that we know very well for cigarettes. Why should they be different? It's not quite as bad as sticking it in your mouth. If you've got 1,000 cigarettes an hour burning in your kitchen, well, you're going to have a lot of that. Lower risk levels, but the same set of diseases. In fact, we've done a study now in our Guatemala site on neurodevelopment, that is cognitive effects in children. Here it shows the mother's exposure during pregnancy, and the child, 6-7 years later, the child's performance on various cognitive tests, significant relationship. Now, one study not ever going to prove anything, but it's certainly what we see in other things. We see with lead exposures, pesticide exposures, traffic air pollution exposures, this impact on cognitive performance. We can't call it IQ because there are no validated IQ tests for this particular population, which is indigenous Mayan population. But do this in a population where there are validated IQ tests, and I'm sure you'd find it for IQ as well. So another thing that's come along recently is we now can link it quantitatively to the other sources of particle pollution. This is a complicated graph, I'm sorry, but I think it's worth trying to go through. This is the exposure, which is measured in inhaled dose of small particles per day. And this is the risk of heart disease, different kinds, it doesn't really matter. So somebody at 1.5, that means they have 50% more heart disease than a population not exposed, or somebody at 2 would have twice the heart disease rate as somebody not exposed. Here, these are all studies of smoking, active smoking, heavy smokers, light smokers. These are studies of passive smokers, the starred ones, and these are studies of outdoor air pollution. Now, it's a log scale for those who understand that, so a lot of variation can be hidden, but notice that it's not, they just drew a straight line through this. Not so unconvincing, is it? I'm not going to show them, but this has been done much more sophisticated modeling and attempts, now been done for pneumonia, lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, stroke, and heart disease. Same relationships found. Now, a colleague and I wrote a commentary called Mind the Gap, because look at this. What's that gap? Who's in that gap? That's where our village houses are. So we expect, as more and more studies are done, that we're going to find heart disease risks around this level. And a 50% increase in heart disease for 40% of the world's population, well, that's not a small matter. So, summary. Worst thing to do is stick burning stuff in your mouth. Next worst is burning it in your house. Not so great having somebody else sticking it in their mouth near you. Even bad to have it burning around your planet. These are just health. Climate, we've got more. And now the bad news. You thought that was bad news? Just because we know it's a risk doesn't mean we know how to fix it. Think of smoking. I think most people would say, the Surgeon General's report, 1964, put all the nails you'll ever need in the smoking coffin. We've added a lot more nails, but that coffin, of course, is never opening again. That smoking vampire is never coming out again. Have we fixed it? No, you couldn't even get the countries to sign the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control in 2005. And impacts are growing. Now, California has done pretty well at lowering smoking rates, but not too many places have. Not that we have learned nothing, but we certainly have not solved it. Now, you could say, well, there are tobacco companies and various things that interfere with this. Well, the relationship between mosquitoes and disease was firmly established, you might think fairly late, during the building of the Panama Canal. But today, there are 1.4 million people dying of malaria still. We haven't fixed it. Causality, just showing causality is not enough to fix it. You have to have some way to do it. And the worst example, the most sobering or depressing example for us, is water and sanitation. I talked to a historian on this, and they say about 1890 was nobody doubted the causality of human waste in the water as being a bad thing by 1890 or so. So 120 years later, we still have 1/3 of the world without clean water and sanitation. So just knowing it's a risk does not mean we know how to fix it, unfortunately. Why is it so hard? I'm going to be talking about, really relates to many of these, but certainly our field. We know what works, after all, what you guys have, gas and electricity. 60% of the world is using those. Clean, other problems to worry about when you have those. But it's not affordable, at least if you ask the poor to pay for it, they can't afford those. Now, affordable can be looked at on a societal basis. We don't ask the poor to pay for their vaccines either. They wouldn't, if you were just relying on the poor, you would never have any vaccines. There would be no vaccine company would ever develop them. But you have other people step in, pay. So affordable, that's quotations mark. And the other technologies are difficult. It's not so effective. And then again, there's no commercial drive. You don't have any drug company out there trying to develop it because they can't make any money off these populations. And these other technologies would be clean burning biomass stoves, using the fuel that people have, the biomass, but burning it cleanly instead of with incomplete combustion. And there's a lot of behavioral change, and that's true with dirty water and sanitation. It's true with smoking. It's true with bed nets for malaria. It's not just a matter of a vaccine. You just inject it. One person has to make one decision, take their child in. The rest of their life, the child is protected in the best vaccines. Here she has to take the decision 3 times a day to use that advanced stove and use it right. That's a very different set of behavioral issues, incentives and so on. Makes it difficult. But yet, I'd say the fact that we have protected 60% of the world means, that's reason to think we can protect, and now we know the benefits of doing so, but it will take a new type of research and development to test interventions in ways that convince the health and donor communities. Those guys who've only got $1, they want to be shown exactly what you're going to get, and we really haven't done much of that yet. But turning back to it, I'd say in order to do that, you're talking about a completely different level of funding. I mean, John Samet, who's a USC dean or chairman here, he has a slide that he starts every lecture with, which is more research needed. So I'm sure John will not disagree. But the level of funding to do these studies, the median, I called the World Bank, who has a database, the median vaccine trial costs $50 million, and sometimes they fail. We haven't had any kind of, that's an order of magnitude above any kind of research that we've ever had in this field. So we're still chasing the risk, and the money hasn't come on board yet, but we hope that'll change. This is attributed to Albert Einstein. I couldn't actually, at least Wikipedia won't verify it for me, but it's a smart thing. He could have said it, right? So I'm hoping that 120 years from now, we aren't like water and sanitation. 1890, they established causality. 120 years later, they're still struggling to find the ways to do this effectively in poor households. So I'm hoping in 2030 we aren't like them, still killing millions of people a year because we haven't figured out how to solve this problem in these kinds of households. So, final slide. Well, in Walden Pond, Thoreau said, wood is the fuel that heats you twice. Once when you chop it, and once when you burn it. Somebody I talked to said, wait a minute, you never tried stacking wood either. So but anyway, this is... but he was wrong. It heats you 4 times. The fever from the respiratory infection and the global warming. But you can fix the last 2 with moving people to clean fuels or better combustion using traditional fuels. So thank you very much.